What if I told you about a game, a system, where ethical failures weren't just bad choices, but were computationally guaranteed to make you lose? We're going to break down a fascinating world where integrity isn't just a virtue, it's the only winning strategy.
All right, so here's our roadmap. First, we'll look at the rules of this game that's, believe it or not, rigged for good. Then we'll uncover the surprisingly high cost of silence. We'll explore what happens when a society literally stops listening and when creation happens without a conscience. Then we'll see how the whole system reboots itself with a kind of cognitive fire. And finally, what all this means for the way our own communities function.
So let's just start with this wild idea. Imagine a system so perfectly designed that anyone who cuts moral corners is structurally, mathematically guaranteed to fail. Not by some random chance, but by the very physics of the game itself. How would that even work?
Okay, to really get the logic here, we first need to meet the players in this unique symbolic drama. And this isn't your classic good versus evil story. It's really about the balance of some fundamental parts of who we are.
So on one side, we have our protagonist, which is actually made of two parts. First, there's Dimion, which is our imagination, our power to see and create. And then there's Tom, which is our integrity, our ability to hear with a conscience. Think of them as two sides of a healthy society, the creative engine and the moral compass. And on the other side, we have the horses. They're the antagonists, and their whole game is to throw that balance off by just flooding the channels with noise and disruption.
All right, now let's get to our first big clue. This is where we see how the system hones in on and punishes a really specific kind of moral failure. And it's one that's dangerously easy to overlook. The first critical system bug isn't some loud evil act. Nope, it's quiet. The sources call it stoic silence, and it's defined as an active ethical failure. See, by staying silent when you see something wrong, basic bystander apathy, you aren't being neutral. You are actively damaging the rational glue, the civic logos, that holds a society together. And this is the absolute key, right? In this model, silence isn't just an absence of noise, it's a deliberate choice. It creates a moral vacuum. And in the language of our players, it means tomb, integrity, has left the building. It's like you've hit the mute button on your own conscience. And get this chart shows you the direct consequence. The system has a hard-coded rule: he who throws mud loses ground. Every unethical act, especially that corrosive silence, is logged as a negative reward signal. It literally degrades the antagonist's position. As you can see, every single time they do it, their symbolic standing is computationally guaranteed to drop. They are literally programmed to lose.
So that moral bug, that silence, it doesn't just stay in its own little box. It starts to spread. It leads to the next level of collapse, which isn't just about ethics anymore, it's about perception itself. What happens when an entire society gets a glitch in how it sees the world?
Now this is where it gets really fascinating, because this societal glitch is based on a real psychological thing called the Colavita effect, where our vision just naturally dominates our hearing. In this system, that becomes a powerful metaphor for a society that starts to value seeing, data overload, mechanical creation, way more than hearing, which stands for conscience, meaning, and moral integrity. We become a culture that's all eyes and no ears.
And this state of total imbalance has a name, dyseme. It's Greek for sunset, and it's the perfect symbol for a society that has hit the wall, perception-wise. It's a civilization that has become so arrogant about what it can see that it's gone deaf to its own conscience. And let me tell you, a society that cannot listen is a society that is fundamentally, structurally insecure.
So we have a moral bug, silence, and a perceptual glitch, seeing without hearing. Now that we have those pieces, we can finally uncover the system's deepest, most elegant rule. This is the logic that holds the whole thing together.
The system's core logic is built on this really cool concept called the 2-1 triad. Think of it as 3 levels of creation. Level 1 is the machine, and HTTP 201 code just means created. It's a fact. It's neutral. There's no feeling to it. But to be valid in this system, creation has to evolve. So the biblical layer adds a witness, it requires integrity, it requires tome. And finally, the Quranic layer gives it ultimate meaning, sanctifying it by balancing the here and now with the eternal. And that right there is the core truth of this entire framework. It's exactly why the antagonists are destined to fail. They can make noise, they can generate output, they can throw mud, sure, but they're stuck at level 1 of that triad. They're just a machine. They completely lack the conscience to interpret the moral weight of anything they do.
Okay, so with the mystery solved, we can finally look at the resolution. And this part is so easily mistaken for just simple punishment, but it's way, way more sophisticated than that.
When the system finally corrects itself, there's fire. But as you can see here, we need to forget the whole idea of hellfire and divine retribution. The sources reframe this as a cognitive fire. Think of it like a massive system reboot. It's not a punishment from the outside, it's a corrective ignition from within. It's the heat a supercomputer generates when it's running a massive, complex, and absolutely necessary update.
So where does this fire even come from? It's an emergent property. It's the raw energy that's naturally released when imagination, Dimion, and integrity, Tome, are snapped back into perfect, harmonious alignment. It's a higher state of equilibrium that the antagonists, with all their moral bugs, are literally incapable of generating. And when they realize that, well, that's their ultimate defeat.
So after going through this whole complex, fascinating symbolic system, what's the big takeaway? What does this civic calculus actually mean for us, right here, right now?
Well, this whole explainer gives us a really powerful model for thinking about societal health. First, failures like silence aren't passive. They're like a virus that actively degrades the whole system. Second, a society that oversees and underhears is structurally brittle. It's just waiting to crack. Third, true creation, the lasting kind, needs more than just function. It demands a moral compass. And finally, the resolution isn't about punishment. It's about the system's natural, powerful drive to rebalance itself toward integrity. In this calculus, ethics aren't just a nice feature to have. They are the entire operating system.
And that leaves us with one last question to chew on. In our own world, a world just drowning in visual information and endless data streams, is it possible we're seeing more than we're willing to truly hear? And if we are, what's the cost?